My daughter forgot to hang up the phone, and I heard her giggling as she told her husband, "Mom is so stupid she doesn't even suspect I'll take over her business in a week." I smiled, but it hurt. It hurts that this can happen in this world. I long ago transferred all my business to my nephew in the deeds and now receive only my share and am the face of the company. It's such a shame that my daughter so rarely showed any interest in anything related to our business that it's now backfired on her. When she came to visit me for the weekend, the house had disappeared. Instead of the old address, there was a for sale sign, and the keys no longer worked. The money she thought was hers was also gone. My lawyers dug through her papers and discovered loans issued to the company without the board's consent. I was pouring tea and thinking, I wonder if she'll choose an apology or war. I knew the answer. My name is Elaine. I'm 68 years old. I set the kettle back on the stove and let the click of cooling metal steady me. That phone call would have cracked me 10 years ago. I used to move quick, rush to make peace, toss money at messes. Age taught me that speed isn't wisdom. Sitting at my kitchen table, I let the facts line up like groceries on the belt. My daughter, Kim, thought the old house and the company money were fruit on a low branch. She didn't know the tree had been grafted years ago, trimmed and tall, with the best apples already spoken for. I'd arranged things that way after 2 back surgeries and 1 betrayal by a partner who wanted to run expenses through his boats. The trust went to my nephew Damon, a quiet number cruncher with stubborn ethics. He ran the books. I shook hands and smiled for holiday cards. That saved us back then. I never guessed it would be the net under me now, catching me from my daughter's fall. I could still hear Kim's laugh in my ear. Maybe she forgot to hang up. Maybe she wanted me to hear. It was the kind of laugh I remember from her teenage years, when she dared the world to cross her. Somewhere between dance recitals and her first credit card, the dare flipped and she started crossing people first. Not strangers, family, easy targets. Me. I took my tea to the porch where the late sun laid a stripe across the railing. I remembered the first day I signed the trust papers with Damon. He said, "Aunt Elaine, you're going to be called paranoid." I said, "Honey, I'm not paranoid, I'm tired." He promised transparency and audits. I promised to keep my hands off day to day. We kept those promises. Kim never asked questions, never sat through a board call, never read a single ledger line, but she liked the photos, the travel, the ribbon cuttings. I indulged her. I told myself I was letting her find her lane. Maybe that was cowardice dressed as patience. By Saturday, the fallout rolled in. Kim showed up with a weekend bag, all hugs and perfume. She blinked at the for sale sign where the old house used to be. New address, new locks. My car parked in a neighbor's garage. I'd sold the old place last month and moved to a smaller brick bungalow closer to my church and clinic. She rattled a key at the door that wasn't mine anymore and went red. "You moved without telling me?" I said I sent 3 emails with photos. She said they went to spam. That was Kim's word for anything that didn't feed her storyline. She tried the card she thought would open my bank box. I told her the box held my quilt patterns and my mother's rosary. Nothing else. "You're lying," she said. "You've always hidden money." I thought if I were still hiding money, your call wouldn't sting this bad. She demanded I transfer her an advance from the company. I asked, "Advance on what?" She said on the job she'd have on Monday. I stirred sugar into my tea, 2 slow circles, and said nothing. On Sunday night, Damon texted, "Call me when alone." I called from the driveway. He said our counsel had found personal loans Kim filed against the company name, no board approval, the kind of thing that can bring down a medium-sized firm if a bank decides to act tough. He said not to worry about the house or the accounts. I was insulated, but he sounded sad. He liked Kim when she was a kid. He used to take her for ice cream after school and let her count coins at the kitchen table. "I'll fix the mess, Tua," he said. I said, "We will." On Monday, I was invited to an extraordinary shareholders meeting that never existed. My daughter and her husband brought a printout with a fake power of attorney and voting protocol. They hadn't noticed that our corporate register had been maintained by an independent agent since the spring, and the secretary's signature was from an old template. a position that had long since been eliminated. While they were trying to open their safe, a bank notification was already in the mail. An attempted transfer of a large sum with a fake confirmation. We rolled up our access cards, and the auditor sent me a screenshot. The night before the revolution, my son-in-law had been funneling money through his sole proprietorship, leaving a digital trail thicker than their wedding album. I offered a simple solution: return the stolen goods, admit to collusion, sign a waiver, and undergo family therapy. In response, my daughter hissed, "See you in court." I nodded. A court case is a court case. But she won't be suing a stupid mother anymore, but rather a trust and facts. They had swagger when they barged into our lobby. Kim in a tight blazer, Dylan, my son-in-law, in a watch that cost more than his first car. Dylan put a manila folder on the receptionist's desk like he was sliding a tip to a bartender. "Call everyone," he said. "This is happening." Our receptionist, Belle, raised an eyebrow and buzzed Damon instead. I stood beside the fern and watched. I didn't hide. I wanted Kim to see my face. Calm, practiced, a little tired. She avoided my eyes. When the independent agent arrived with the real register, the party ended. Dylan blustered about operational necessity. Damon asked him to define it. Dylan couldn't spell it. Kim pushed forward the fake power of attorney, hand shaking just enough to betray her nerves. Damon took one look and tapped the date. "That secretary retired 3 years ago," he said. "Also, we don't have that role anymore." Dylan snapped, "Lawyers will sort it out." I said, "Yes, they will." We ushered them into a conference room. Glass walls, long table, bowl of peppermints. Kim wouldn't sit. Dylan paced. "We can do this quietly," I said, and laid out the offer. Return, admit, counseling, no police. Kim curled her lip like I'd offered her a used coupon. "You don't get to make me beg," she said. I felt that old urge to fold. Instead, I watched Damon slide a printout from the bank. Attempted transfer, flagged, wrong confirmation code, alert sent to the trust. My heart thumped once. Heavy. I remembered Kim's giggle through the phone line. How could my daughter do this to me? I swallowed the ache and kept my voice level. "This is your exit ramp," I said. "Take it." She chose the cliff. "See you in court." She grabbed Dylan's arm and hauled him out. He tore a peppermint wrapper and left it on the floor. That evening I went home and made soup. Carrots, celery, onion, a leftover rotisserie chicken. I cooked when I needed to think. The scent filled the little bungalow, and I played the messages on speaker. One from a supplier. "Elaine, just checking, there's a new email from accounts payable. Different address." "Is that legit?" My spoon stopped mid-stir. I called Damon. He was already tracing it. "Looks like a domain Dylan registered last month," he said. "He's trying to reroute invoices." I turned off the stove and sat. I thought about my granddaughter Evie, asleep in a pink room across town. I thought about the picture on my fridge of Kim at 7 with a gap-toothed grin and a scruffy cat. I asked myself, how did we slide from missing teeth and cats to forged signatures and stolen invoices? I didn't have the nerve to cry, so I packed soup into containers and wrote labels for Damon and Belle. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel. Like it, and let us know in the comments what time it is where you're listening to this story. The next morning, I met my pastor for a walk. He's younger than me, a runner, always checking in on his seasoned saints, as he calls us. I told him the bare bones. He said, "Boundaries are loving too." I nodded, pretending that sentence didn't feel like salt in a wound. After he jogged off, I sat on the park bench and wrote a list on the back of a grocery receipt. Protect employees, protect suppliers, protect Kim from herself if I can. Legal, clean, no performative drama. I knew the plan already. I just needed courage to follow it. And we do a formal notice to vendors, a staff meeting with clear steps, and an audit announcement that left no room for rumor. In private, we'd give Kim one more chance to take the exit ramp. I'd write her in my own words without a lawyer's polish, choose family over noise, choose repair over spectacle. At mid-morning, I stopped by the office unannounced. The The hum of printers always steadied me. Belle waved me into the break room where the real news traveled. People were nervous, glancing up from coffee cups like birds gauging weather. I told them in plain English there was an attempted power grab, it failed, no paychecks would bounce, their health insurance was safe. I watched shoulders drop around the table, no technical jargon, no blame in their hearing. They deserved calm. Out in the hallway, Damon caught up and handed me a folder. "We found payments to a sole proprietorship," he said, face grim. "Dylan's." He didn't yet know the scale, but the shape was ugly. I felt my stomach clench. My mind sketched how Dylan might have sold it to Kim, just temporary cash flow. Everyone does it, your mom won't notice. He underestimated how many nights I'd spent with receipts and coffee, how many storms I'd learned to smell before the clouds built. That evening, after a long shower and a longer prayer, I called Kim. She answered on the second ring, voice bright, brittle. "Are you ready to apologize?" she asked. "For what?" I said softly. "For trying to ruin our chance," she said. "Dylan had a plan." I asked, "Did his plan include lying to a bank and stiffing vendors?" She sighed like I was a small problem. "It's not lying if the result is good." I closed my eyes. "Baby," I said. "That's not how life works." She said, "I'm not your baby." I said nothing. Silence stretched so long I could hear her breathing. I offered the exit ramp again, with details, with dignity. Kim said, "Keep your therapy. See you in court," and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table and put my forehead on my folded arms. The wood was cool. My question rose again, meaner this time. How could my daughter do this to me? And right behind it, another, how could I let it happen again? That was the one that got me up out of the chair. I pulled out a legal pad and wrote the bones of a speech. If Kim wanted court, we'd show up with clean hands, full records, and no theatrics. But before that, I'd do what I could to stop the bleeding. We would ring fence our team and send out a vendor alert with a phone hotline staffed by actual humans. We'd turn the mess into a training about scams and impersonation. Nobody likes that word when it's family, but scams are scams even when the con artist shares Christmas dinner. Midweek, our IT lead, Joe, walked me through the digital trail. Dylan had been clever enough to confuse a casual eye, not clever enough to avoid timestamps. Email aliases, late-night invoice edits, a login from his brother's lake house. "He left footprints on wet cement," Joe said. "We've got him." I nodded, but my chest hurt. You don't celebrate when the person on the hook sits at your table on Sundays. You just keep moving step by step. Damon whispered, "Aunt Elaine, we have to be ready if Kim tries to blow this up online." I said, "We answer with facts, no mud." He agreed. That night, I drafted the message to Kim the old-fashioned way, on paper first, then text. You can still choose family over rumors, but until Friday. I hit send and turned my phone face down. When it lit up, I didn't look. I washed dishes, folded towels, refilled the dog's bowl. I tried to sleep and instead rewound to that giggle again. I wondered whether, years ago, my softness taught Kim the wrong lesson, that money appears, that deadlines bend, that mom plugs holes. You can love your child and still admit you gave them a map with a missing north. Thursday afternoon, I walked into the warehouse unannounced. The line workers lifted their chins, curious. I like the warehouse. Honest noise. The manager, Rosie, came over with a clipboard. "We good?" she asked, and I told her straight. "There's a family matter. The company is steady. Your overtime is safe." Rosie squeezed my hand. "We'll keep things moving." On the way out, I spotted a box of branded mugs Kim ordered last year. Pink with gold script. "Boss babe." I touched one and felt tears behind my eyes. I promised myself not to cry in spaces my team used to find courage. I walked faster, chin up. If I needed to crumble, I'd do it at home, where my floor knew my weight. That evening, I sat on the porch again. Neighborhood kids biked past. A father taught a boy to throw a baseball, shouting, "Elbow up!" The air turned cool. I texted my sister in Ohio a simple, "Whoa, Pray. She replied with a string of hearts and a photo of her tomato plants because that's how sisters say, I'm here, without crowding the wound. I set my phone down and watched the pink bleed out of the sky. These days, with prices climbing and headlines buzzing about strikes and storms, I know a lot of folks feel worn thin. If that's you, you're not alone. On Friday morning, I dressed like I do for funerals and grandbabies' recitals. Navy dress, flats, pearl studs. Damon met me at the office with coffee and a folder of exhibits. I told him I didn't want to perform a show. We won't, he said. We will tell the truth. Belle had set up chairs in the training room, not the boardroom, neutral ground. Staff drifted in, then suppliers, then our registry agent and the bank's fraud rep. It felt less like a meeting and more like a flu clinic. People came in with worry and wanted a shot of reassurance. Kim arrived late. She wore white, as if to advertise innocence. Dylan wore smugness, which fit him better than any suit. He looked around the room and whispered to Kim, and she nodded with a tight mouth. My heart wanted to sprint. I told it to walk. I began before anyone else could. I didn't use a mic. I used my regular voice. I laid out the trust, the timeline, the failed vote, the bank's alert. I didn't name call. I didn't look at Kim more than necessary. When the registry agent confirmed the register was intact and the fake secretary a fossil from the past, a murmur moved through the room. Dylan tried to bluster. This is a misunderstanding. We were advised. I lifted a hand. You were advised by greed, I said. Not loud, but firm. Kim flinched like I'd slapped her. I closed the folder and let the room breathe. We weren't done, but we were past pretending. During the break, Kim cornered me near the coffee urn. Her hands trembled, her eyes were glassy. You're humiliating me, she said, low. No, I said. You did that when you forged my name. She jerked like I'd tugged a wire. I didn't. Dylan said, and then she stopped, mouth snapping shut. Dylan strode over, jaw tight. Our lawyers will, he began. I cut him off. They'll read, I said. That's their job? He sneered and backed away. Kim's eyes filled. Mom, she whispered, the word like a plea and an accusation at once. I looked at her and felt love and anger, the worst pair. I kept my voice steady. You still have an exit. Please take it. She looked down, then away. I can't, she said. Not yet. I went back in, feeling older than my age. Damon squeezed my shoulder once. Joe presented the digital trail. The bank rep spoke in a neutral tone that somehow felt like judgment. People listened, eyes on the tables, feet twitching. Truth landed and sat heavy among us. We wrapped for the day's session with a promise to reconvene after lunch for questions. Kim and Dylan didn't linger. They stalked out like a storm leaving town, wind still tugging at branches. I stood alone by the window for a minute, palm on the cool glass. When Damon returned, he found me there. You okay? He asked. No, I said. But I'm not broken. He nodded. In the reflection, my face looked like my mother's in her last good photo. Lined, steady, unsentimental. I remembered her telling me when I was 30 and came home with a broken heart, you can love without letting yourself be used up. Took me decades to learn that for real. At home that evening, I watered the plants and fed the dog and texted Kim again. You can still choose family over rumors until Friday night. No reply. I went to bed early and woke at 2, staring at the ceiling fan. A plan ticked in my mind, clean and plain. Next week, if she refused the exit, we would announce a full public audit, a staff bonus pool funded by recoveries, and a vendor helpline. Not as a threat, but as a promise to the people who never tried to steal anything from me except time and trust. It was a shape of revenge I could live with. Legal, calm, and seen by the people who mattered. Morning came gray. I brewed coffee and opened the blinds. An email sat in my inbox from a supplier Kim had cultivated, as Dylan put it in one of his messages. It was full of apologies and fear. I typed a reply, short, human, and signed my name. Then I shut the laptop and folded laundry. Little normal things ran like stitches through a torn seam, pulling the edges closer. The phone stayed quiet. Silence can be a kind of answer. When the sun rose higher, I pulled out my speech draft again and read it aloud, changing a word here, a phrase there. I added a line at the end that wasn't for Kim or Dylan or the bank. It was for my people and for me. We are going to walk this out with our backs straight. If you've ever been betrayed by your own, you know that's half the battle, refusing to hunch. I drove to the office, parked in my usual spot, and sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel. I thought of Evie's freckles. I thought of the first check I ever cashed with my name spelled right. I thought of my daughter's laugh through a phone line she forgot to hang up. My chest tightened, then loosened. I turned off the car and went inside, ready to do the next right thing, one careful step at a time. When we uncovered the correspondence, it turned out to be worse than I thought. My son-in-law wasn't just planning to take over management. He was using our suppliers as a feeding trough, inflating the company's bills from a shell company he controlled. In 6 months, he'd withdrawn an amount equal to a year's payroll. I sat in the kitchen and counted not zeros, but the consequences. In a criminal case, my daughter could be charged as an accomplice, even if she just wasn't paying attention. How did I bring her to this? A pang stabbed me inside. And how can I stop her without breaking her forever? The lawyers proposed a harsh but legal solution. We'll freeze the assets, recover the money through a civil suit, and tentatively park the criminal case if she testifies and helps shut down the scheme. At the same time, we're launching a public audit and an employee support program. Bonuses will be paid from the recovered funds. That evening, I plucked up the courage and wrote to my daughter, "You can still choose family over rumors." But until Friday, she read it and remained silent. I carried that silence like a brick in my purse. Every ring of the phone felt like it might be Kim or might be a debt collector made from smoke. Damon and I met with counsel and kept the focus narrow. Protect the company, protect the people, leave a path for Kim to walk back. The civil suit draft read like a train schedule. Dates, amounts, routes. Clean. My chest still ached. Love and duty do not always pull in the same direction. When I looked at Evie's school photo on my fridge, I decided again that I had to keep my back straight. Children watch more than they listen. I asked counsel to set the asset freeze in motion for Dylan's shell. We notified the banks and sent a vendor bulletin that used words my grandmother would have understood. No acronyms, no scare tactics. A few old-timers called, grateful to hear a living voice. I answered as many as I could myself. In the breaks, I wrote to Kim again, shorter each time. Friday is still open. She left the messages on red. That little gray word, read, burned worse than any reply. Damon walked me through the employee support plan. We can tie bonuses to milestones, he said. As we recover funds, we share the win. I loved that. Workers shouldn't bleed for someone else's bad gamble. We mapped it out on a whiteboard. Belle snapped a photo. Joe prepared a plain language FAQ. None of it felt like revenge. It felt like repair, which is its own kind of justice when done in the light. The night before the next session, I dreamed I was back in my first shop, sweeping sawdust from a floor I couldn't finish cleaning. Every time I pushed the broom, new dust fell from nowhere. I woke with a start and sat in the quiet. The dog snored. Streetlights threw a yellow slant on the wall. I whispered, "Lord, let me be stubborn in the right places." Morning brought more evidence. Joe found Dylan's backdated invoices. Damon found a whisper thread where Kim had messaged 2 junior staffers to sign off on things as a favor. The staffers had refused and saved the screenshots. I thanked them in person, in the hallway, with my whole face. They looked scared anyway. Nobody likes being in the middle of a family mess. "You did right," I said. "You won't regret it." I meant it. I called Kim at lunchtime. She answered, wary. "You keep sending me ultimatums," she said. "I keep sending you chances," I said. "There's a difference." She laughed once, a short, hard sound. You're enjoying this. The words hit me like gravel. No, I said. There's no joy in this. There was a silence full of static. Then she said, Dylan says you're bluffing. I said, Dylan is wrong. She hung up. I stared at the phone and wondered for the 100th time how my little girl learned to throw her lot in with swagger instead of truth. How could my daughter do this to me? And deeper, when did I stop being the person she trusted with the messy truth? I took that ache to the meeting room and used it as fuel. We set out water pitchers and printed handouts. Damon rehearsed the order of speakers. Belle checked the badges at the door. I asked Joe to prepare a slide that showed every dollar routed through Dylan's shell in one clean column. I didn't want to humiliate. I wanted to remove the fog. We opened with thanks, then with facts. The registry agent confirmed safeguards. The bank agent detailed the attempt that triggered their alert. I kept my hands flat on the table. When questions came, I answered simply. Yes, we're taking civil steps. Yes, we will pay staff bonuses from recovered funds. Yes, we offered a private settlement with counseling. Someone asked if we'd press charges. I said, we will do what protects the company and gives my daughter the best chance to make a lawful repair. My voice didn't shake until I sat down. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and let us know in the comments what time it is where you're listening to this story. That night, I drove home past the old block just to see the porch where Kim learned to ride a bike. The for sale sign was gone. A young couple stood on the steps holding takeout and dancing to music only they could hear. I parked a minute and watched. I thought about how seasons change, how houses hold our shadows for a while and then release them. I let myself cry a little, quiet tears that didn't rack my body, just rinsed grit from my eyes. Then I drove to the bungalow and made toast with peanut butter and a sliced banana, because feeding yourself when the world shakes is holy work. The next morning, Damon texted, "We're ready for the supplier Q&A. You sure you want to lead?" I answered, yes. I wanted people to look at me and know the ship had a captain. In the hallway, I ran into Kim. She looked tired, skin gray under makeup. "Mom," she said, "can we talk?" I nodded and we stepped into a storage room among cartons of paper and a humming mini fridge. She closed the door and leaned against it. "If I cooperate, do I go to jail?" she asked. The words broke me and steadied me at the same time. "If you cooperate, we can hold the criminal side in abeyance," I said. "It's not forgiveness, it's a pause that lets you climb back." She stared at the floor. "Dylan says we should burn it all down." I said, "Dylan loves fire. He's not the one who gets burned." Her eyes filled. "I don't know what to do." I took a small step closer, careful not to crowd her. "Do the next right thing," I said. "Start with the truth." She opened her mouth, closed it, and whispered, "I'm scared." "Me too," I said. "But we'll be brave, 1 inch at a time." She nodded like a child, then straightened and wiped her face. "I need to think." She slipped out before I could say more. Here's the part I haven't told anyone until now. I had a second plan tucked in my purse, written in a folded note I kept under my lipstick. If Kim refused, we would move to appoint an employee council with oversight on all non-routine expenditures for 12 months. Not to punish, but to rebuild trust from the floor up. I wanted the folks who lifted boxes and balanced ledgers and answered phones to feel the steering wheel in their hands for a while. If power had turned my daughter's head, maybe shared power could heal the rest of us. Midday, the news cycle started chewing on a local lawsuit that sounded a lot like ours in a company across town. Talking heads barked, comment sections grew thorns. I shut my laptop. We would not feed the noise. We would do our work. By afternoon, one of the junior accountants brought me a thumb drive. "I shouldn't have this," she said, "but Dylan gave me a file to shred last week. I couldn't." Her hands shook. I thanked her and told her she did the right thing. Joe scanned it and found records of calls between Dylan and a consultant who offered to coach him on mom-proofing the takeover. The cruelty of that phrase knocked the wind out of me. I sat a long minute, breathing slow. Then I asked Joe to add it to the package, not to shame me, but to Make the motive clear. When people see what greed sounds like in a text bubble, it loses glamour. For many of us, with election noise rising and groceries costing more every week, it's easy to feel like the ground keeps shifting. If you're listening while you fold laundry or ride the bus, take a breath with me. I slept badly that night. At 4 a.m, I made coffee and wrote out what I would say if Kim stood up and chose the exit. I wrote the words I would use if she didn't too. I practiced both in the mirror. I practiced my face. Soft if she came home, steel if she didn't. It felt ridiculous and necessary. Grown women rehearse. That's why we survive. Friday dawned clear. People filed in early. The room held a different energy, heavier, like the air before rain. The bank rep came back with a folder. The registry agent nodded at me across the room. Damon stood at my right, Belle at my left. I squeezed their fingers, one each, like a quick prayer. Friday turned into a theater of truth. The room was filled with employees, suppliers, the bank, and our registry agent. I went first. I showed the trust agreement, the clause prohibiting director changes without an independent quorum, the statements with the money routings, and letters from suppliers my son-in-law had cultivated. Then came the proposal. Return the funds, sign a settlement agreement, publicly apologize to the team, and work for a year in a position without access to funds under the mentorship of an auditor. In exchange, I offered a waiver of criminal prosecution and family therapy, paid for by me. My son-in-law tried to launch an attack, and then the bank agent played a recording of his negotiations about draining Mom's business. My daughter turned pale, her hands trembling. She stood up and quietly said, "I agree." The contract was signed on the spot, the money was returned to the escrow account, and I created a fund for the employees. From fines and penalties, the house returned from the renovation exactly as I'd envisioned it, with a closed door for those who come with lies and an open window for those who choose the truth. The air went thin. I heard someone exhale like a tire losing air. Dylan stared at Kim, stunned, then tried to talk over the bank agent and failed. He muttered something about appeals and lawyers. I didn't look at him. I looked at my daughter. Her chin shook. I felt something inside me loosen and settle, like a joint slipping back into place with a click. Damon slid the settlement across. Kim signed with steady strokes. When it came to me, my hand didn't tremble. I wrote my name like a promise kept. After, we didn't clap. This wasn't theater. People drifted toward the coffee, then toward night with quiet words. Thank you. We were scared. We're with you. I took each one like a small stone, built a cairn in my pocket to mark the way we'd come. Belle cried and laughed at the same time. Joe looked 17 and 70 in one face. Damon hugged me in the hallway, quick and fierce. You did it, he said. We did it, I said. And Kim did her part. Kim found me in a small office, sat, and slid her phone across the desk. Text with Dylan, she said. You'll need them. I stared. You're sure? She nodded. I'm done. The words sounded like a door closing and a window opening. She took a breath that seemed to fill her whole chest. What happens now? Now, I said, we work. You'll show up Monday and take your spot in compliance under the auditor. You'll listen more than you talk. You'll go to therapy with me and alone. You'll babysit Evie Saturday so I can sleep. And you will apologize to the team in words you write yourself. She swallowed. Yes. Then she whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't rush to fill the space. I let the words sit between us until they were real. Thank you, I said. We both cried a little. Not loud. Enough. We gathered the staff and made the announcement about the fund and the bonuses tied to recoveries. The room changed. People stood taller. I told them we'd put an employee council in place for a year. The cheer that rose startled me. It wasn't rowdy, but it was warm. Folks want to say in the house they keep standing. That weekend, I didn't answer the doorbell. I turned off alerts. I cooked. I napped. I walked around the block. Kim texted me a photo of Evie drawing a heart with pink chalk. I sent back a heart and an apple and then typed, "We will never talk about money like that again." She replied, I know. On Monday, Kim showed up early in a plain sweater and flats, hair pulled back, notebook in hand. The auditor, a woman my age with a dry wit, met her with a firm handshake and no fuss. I watched from the hall and felt older and younger at once. Dylan sent 2 angry emails that our counsel redirected into a file with a neat label. I didn't read them. I didn't need that flavor of poison in my mouth. The first supplier refund hit the account by Wednesday noon. Belle rang a little bell she keeps for birthdays. Folks clapped. Damon did the math and announced the first round of bonuses. The cheer this time was louder. Rosie from the warehouse lifted me off my feet in a hug that left me breathless. I laughed for the first time in weeks, the kind of laugh that shakes dust from corners. We hosted a town hall live stream for clients. I sat beside Damon and spoke plain. We owned what happened. We didn't name Kim or Dylan. We highlighted the audit, the counsel, the vendor hotline. Comments scrolled by, some kind, some snide. We stayed steady. After, an old client wrote, "Been with you since 2003, staying." I printed that email and taped it to my office cabinet like a blessing. In the middle of all this, the weather app screamed about heat warnings one day and a sudden storm the next. The world keeps throwing curveballs. If you're listening while you stir a pot or ride out a thunderstorm, I'm with you. Kim's apology to the staff came on a Thursday. She stood by the copier, not on a stage, and read from a sheet of paper. Her voice wobbled, then steadied. She did not say, "If I hurt anyone." She said, "I did harm." She named 3 specific things and promised 2 specific actions. No excuses. When she finished, nobody clapped, but nobody walked away either. People nodded. Some came up and touched her elbow. I stood in the back and let my breath out slow. The auditor met my eyes and gave a small nod. We were doing grown-up work. The civil suit moved along without drama. Dylan tried to use the press. The press had moved on. His counsel floated trial balloons. We popped them with documents. In the end, he agreed to a repayment schedule that will take him years. We put liens where liens belong, and then we stopped thinking about him. Justice can be quiet. It doesn't always come with headlines. Sometimes it looks like a calendar reminder that says, "Received payment number 7," and a bonus envelope handed to a forklift driver 2 days before school starts. At home, the bungalow started to feel like a place to live rather than a bunker. I planted basil and tomatoes in pots on the back steps. I taught Evie to pinch the tops so the plants would grow bushy. She asked, "Is Mommy in trouble?" I said, "Mommy made mistakes and is fixing them." Kids understand that better than we do sometimes. Evie nodded and went back to pulling worms from the dirt like they were surprise gifts. I kept one boundary that hurt, a closed door to the old patterns. No cash on demand, no rescuing from a mess she made after we'd agreed on the rules. I held that line and found out it wasn't a wall, it was a handrail. Kim began to use it. She called before decisions. She asked me to look at a budget she made and didn't argue when I crossed out a line. We started to talk about things that weren't money at all. Her favorite podcasts, wheat bread versus white, whether my knees felt better with the new shoes. We stitched back something that might hold. The employee council surprised me. They didn't grandstand. They asked great questions. They caught 2 small mistakes before they grew teeth. They recommended a tuition stipend for 2 single moms on the line. We funded it. When the first one passed her certification exam, she brought the certificate to show me like a second grader. We took a photo. I put it next to the client's "Been with you since 2003" note. Those 2 pieces of paper sit side by side. Loyalty and growth, both earned, both sweet. On the 1-month mark, we held a breakfast in the warehouse. Donuts, scrambled eggs in foil pans, orange juice in plastic pitchers that spill no matter how careful you are. I stood on a milk crate to say thank you and found myself tearing up in front of everyone, which I try not to do. "You all held the roof while my family learned the hard way," I said. "I won't forget it." Rosie yelled, "We got you!" And the crowd murmured agreement you could feel in your ribs. I went home smelling like syrup and cardboard and hope. That night, I sat on the porch swing, bare feet on a cool step, and let the quiet hold me. My phone buzzed. "Kim." "Therapy was hard." I told the truth. Me, proud of you. Hard doesn't mean wrong. She sent a heart. I sent back a thumbs up and a banana because emojis let us be silly when the room is heavy. I thought about calling Dylan son-in-law and decided not to. Words shape reality. He is a chapter. He's not the book. As for me, I keep the folded note in my purse as a reminder that strong plans fit in small spaces. I keep the trust papers in a drawer where Evie can't climb. I keep a photo of Kim at 7 with that gap-toothed grin. I keep the present right in front of my face and the past in the rear view where it belongs. At our next live stream, I said a thing I wish someone had told me when I was younger. You can love a person and still say no. You can hold a door open and still lock the safe. You can be kind and not be a fool. People in the chat typed little amens that felt like a hand squeeze across a crowded room. Justice prevailed here, not because I won and someone else lost, but because the truth sat in the center and we walked around it. Money moved back where it belonged. Jobs stayed. A daughter turned toward the light. The company learned to listen with new ears. I didn't get my old house back, but I got something better, a home where the door is open for people who tell the truth and closed against the rest. That's enough for me. Tell me, what's the moral you hear in this story? And if this moved you, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment with the time where you're listening.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.